Hello, everybody. This is Steve Laurvick with Barry the Big Dog Simon on the BDBFF Club Fantasy Football Week 12 webinar. Everybody, things are winding down. Many of you, I imagine if you're on this call, are doing well in your league, and those who are not are probably falling off a little bit. And that means that there might be some opportunities on the waiver wire for those of us who are still in it. Barry, what do you think about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously at this point of the season, we're now talking really, really deep grabs. People that are most of the top guys are gone, but there are some gems out there that are possible that could help you out, especially for a 1 or 2 week play. But what you might want to do at this point is, if you're in the hunt, and whether you looks like you're going to get a playoff spot, you may want to look at some of the schedules for some of these guys for playoffs, for the playoff weekends in week 15 and 16, and see who has favorable matchups, and just stash them on your bench now for possibility to play them.
Right. Hey, it's my contention, though, that a lot of these guys, and usually it's going to be half or more of the people in your league, that no longer are in contention, and it's clear they're not going to be in the playoffs,
right,
are going to go pick up players on teams that they like, and say screw it.
I agree. Just to talk, and another trend I just sort of want to mention is I've noticed recently, and it's been happening sort of throughout the year, is that there are number 2 or backup running backs on some teams, maybe 5, 6, 7 of them out there, that are actually have been really productive. And they may be worth going in and getting, and I'm going to mention some names, because if some of these teams have clinched playoff spots by the last couple of weeks, they may give their starters some rest, and they may, these guys may see more playing time. And like guys like Leon Washington for the Jets. Jets are in first place in the AFC East. They may look to give Thomas Jones some time at the end of the year if they have that division clinched. But that's a close division, so I don't know what's going to happen. But I'm just saying. But Leon Washington has been productive every week. Every week he's getting touchdowns, 50, 60, 70 combined yards. Fred Jackson the other night for Buffalo. The other night he played really well, and he's been playing really well. He's been getting 50. These are guys who will probably consistently get you 50 or 60 combined yards a game, and they have been scoring occasional touchdowns. Jarius Norwood is another one. He's been playing really well. And see, these are guys who are not in a tandem situation. There are number 1 running backs on these teams who are seeing most of the carries, and these guys are just being brought in for maybe 8-10 carries a game, and they're making the most out of them. 2 more I want to mention is the other night Jerome Harrison for Cleveland. Now that might have been a one-time thing, but he had a 72-yard run for a touchdown. And Jamal Lewis is lost a step. Now the only thing is Harrison is injured. He did get injured in that game, and his status is uncertain. But Jamal Lewis, he'll get you 50, 60 yards a game, but that's all he's doing, and maybe a touchdown. He's not being any more productive than some of these other guys I'm mentioning. The last one is Ahmad Bradshaw. He's the number 3 running back with the Giants, but he's getting consistent points. He's getting touchdowns, and if Brandon Jacobs is hurt, which they're saying his status is up in the air, Bradshaw's definitely worth picking up and possibly starting this week if Brandon Jacobs doesn't play, because he's going to be the main guy behind Derek Ward.
This is something, Barry, that was very evident. For instance, when LaDainian Tomlinson would come into the playoffs for fantasy football weeks, he almost never played when they were dominant in the division.
Right.
And his backup Turner was the guy to have on your squad if you wanted to win them in the playoffs. Same thing kind of with Indianapolis Colts with Peyton Manning. So in looking at that trend, Tennessee and the New York Giants would seem to be 2 teams that you might want to.
Well, Tennessee has 2 backs. That's a tandem situation. These are guys who are not in tandem situations. All of these teams have clear-cut number 1 running backs. And these guys are just coming in for 8-10 carries a game, and they're being really effective with those carries. And, it's just something to keep an eye on. If you're looking deep on a bench and you need a running back, I would start any one of these guys if I didn't have a better option, because they're all being pretty productive. And you never know, who would have thought that Jerome Harrison would break out for more yards than Jamal Lewis the other night and score a touchdown, which Jamal Lewis didn't do.
Yeah, there are always surprises. But I think in certain years, when you have teams that are really dominant and get up this time of year, it's easier to spot those trends. So we appreciate your digging in and and finding some for us, Barry.
Well,
What's up next?
Okay, some quick waiver wire pickups. Warwick Dunn, obviously, he probably is picked up in most leagues, but if not, with Ernest Graham now out for the season, he's going to be a big guy. Tyler Thigpen, we've talked about. With Brandon Jacobs' status uncertain, both Derek Ward and Ahmad Bradshaw, if they're still out there, which is probably very low percentage of them are out there in most leagues. Peyton Hillis, if he's still out there, 2 touchdowns last week. He's going to be the starter in Denver. Another one now. This one's J.J. Arrington for the Cardinals for Arizona. He actually got 2 touchdowns last week, and Tim Hightower has not been that impressive since they made him the starter. And Arrington has actually been outscoring him the last couple of games because he's the one getting the touchdowns. Amon Green, he's been on fire. He had 2 touchdowns last week too. I already mentioned Fred Jackson and Leon Washington. Antonio Bryant, he probably is not available, but if he is, he's definitely someone you want to pick up. Right now, Justin Gage is the most picked up guy on the Yahoo website. He's been the highest as far as ads for this week, the highest guy added. He's definitely someone to look at, even though I don't foresee him replicating the 147 yards and 2 touchdowns from last week, but he is getting, consistent throws from college, and now teams are really focusing on stopping the run with Tennessee because they know Tennessee is a run-first team, and it's forced Collins to definitely go to the air more. Deion Branch, he's back, and Hasselbeck's back, even though didn't look too great last week. I give them a week or 2 to work out some chemistry, and they might be worth a play. Ted Ginn, he is up and down. 1 week he'll play really well. 1 week Greg Camarillo will play well, and they sort of switch back and forth. But last week he had a 50-yard run for a touchdown. So they're using him more in the Wildcat as far as they're giving him some runs and some passes. A guy to look at who might be on your waiver wire because he might have gotten dropped because of his injury was Felix Jones. He's scheduled to come back this week, and if he does, definitely a good pickup because, again, I don't see Marion Barber sitting. Dallas is not in a position where they can sit him. But in the case of an injury, or Felix Jones was one of those guys I was talking about earlier who was filling that role, getting 60, 70, 80 yards a game and touchdowns, even on limited carries. And then 2 defenses you might want to look at picking up this week who are probably on your waiver wire. One is the Broncos defense playing the Raiders. Again, I recommend any defense playing the Raiders. And the Redskins defense who are playing Seattle. So those are 2 defenses that if you need a defense, if you have the Baltimore defense who's playing the Giants, or if you have a defense that is not looking like they have a good matchup this week, then might want to reach for one of these 2.
All right, but let me throw out a couple of questions we have from BDBFF Club members. We've got interesting one. Is it time to bench Brian Westbrook? Westbrook, did not look good last week. I need to start 2 backs from Westbrook, Lendale White, and D'Angelo Williams. This is from Chuck Griffin in Georgia.
Well, I think this one you have to really look at because Westbrook's entire value is based on whether or not he's injured. There was one of the quotes on the Yahoo website this week is that it says from one of the sports writers on there says Brian Westbrook looks alarmingly hobbled, and that's definitely something. I mean, if he's injured, obviously you don't want to play him, especially against Baltimore because Baltimore's tough enough against the run as it is, even though they sort of they had a lapse last week against the Giants. I would probably sit him this week because he doesn't look healthy. And he just doesn't look like he's going to be at full strength, and he's playing one of the number 1 run defense in the league. But if he's coming back healthy, I would say start him. I would always start Brian Westbrook when he's healthy.
It's hard to stick one of your studs on the bench, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say so. In fact, just touching on that subject, I'm actually in another league today where the person who had Steven Jackson actually dropped him, and nobody's picked him up. And I think that's because his thigh injury is a lot worse than people think, and there was a note in there saying that he could be out for the next 2 or 3 games. So people this week they've already announced him out for this week, which is the fastest they've announced him out. Normally they wait till the end of the week. But
was that a paid league or legal?
No, it's a free league.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing for people leave Westbrook on the bench.
Not Westbrook, Steven Jackson.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jackson.
Yeah, they dropped Steven Jackson, so we'll have to wait and see. I may pick him, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. All right. Next question comes from a Packer fan, Andy in Racine. I need to start 2 wide receivers from Lavernius Coles, Donald Driver, Braylon Edwards, and Calvin Johnson. Who should I choose?
Well, he's got some decent choices. I would probably start Braylon Edwards going against Houston. Houston is not that great defensively, and Braylon Edwards actually has been pretty good the last couple of weeks. I don't know if I would trust the Jets wide receiver going against Tennessee. That's a tough matchup for Coles. Plus, he's not the number one guy there anyway. Jericho Cotchery is. Out of the two that are left, I would probably, Calvin Johnson's the number one guy over there. So,
been hot too.
Yeah, and he's been hot, and Detroit's playing Tampa Bay, so I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball. So I would probably go with Calvin Johnson and Braylon Edwards as the two guys I would start.
All right, but what do you want to do next?
All right, well, I want to talk about a few injuries that I've already touched on a little bit, and I don't have a full injury report, however, that will be on the website within the next day or so. But some of the key injuries I've already talked about is Brian Westbrook. Keep an eye on him. Again, I don't know if he's going to play, and even if he does, he could be really limited. I think that if you're going to have to start somebody off of that team, you'd want to start Buckhalter. Brandon Jacobs, we talked about. The problem with the Brandon Jacobs injury is Brandon Jacobs is telling everybody he's fine and he wants to play and he believes he can play. The problem is he's also saying that if they let me play. So it looks like he feels he's healthy enough to play, but the Giants organization figure, hey, we have, Derek Ward and Ahmad Bradshaw. We don't need to risk him at this point. We sort of want to save him so he's healthier, toward the end of the season. And, I think with Bradshaw and, they're going against Arizona, and I think they feel with Ward and Bradshaw, they could be just as effective. Obviously Jacobs is a big player, but they're feeling that against Arizona that they could run the ball effectively with just those two guys. So Jacobs is definitely a wait-and-see thing, but I guess he wants to play, but the organization may sit him. Ernest Graham was put on the injured reserve. He's out for the season. Kellen Winslow has a shoulder thing going on. He hurt his shoulder in Monday night's game, and he's questionable. He didn't practice today, and they're saying he's definitely questionable, and his status is uncertain for the game this week. So he would be a great play against Houston, but keep an eye on him. If you have him, you may want to go out there and try to get another tight end just in case. Another one is Steven Jackson. We talked about his injury. He's going to be out at least a couple more weeks. And one that I heard about today was Tony Gonzalez. Tony Gonzalez has an injury too. His status is uncertain for this week. So, with the Chiefs being out of it as far as they are, there's no reason for them to play him if he's at all injured. So he's definitely another one to keep an eye on. And if he's not going to be there, you want to go and get another tight end. So those are just some of the main injuries that I wanted to talk about.
All right. Here's a question from Down Under. Donk in Brisbane says, which quarterback should I start? Tony Romo, Matt Ryan. Neither was very good last week.
Well, I think that with the matchups, again, this is when you got to play the matchups. I would have never, ever thought I would say, Matt Ryan over Tony Romo, and I'm not going to say that this week either. Tony Romo, he's got to come back. He's got to work his way in. I figured he built some chemistry last week, but he is playing San Francisco and at home, and I think that's a much better matchup than Matt Ryan against Carolina. Carolina has one of the top pass defenses in the league. And I think this week Romo may actually get some more chemistry going with his receivers, and much less stellar defense that he's going against. So I would say Romo.
Bandage on his hand in that game.
Yeah, but they only figure that's going to be on another week, and it will be on.
He just came out of the emergency room or something.
I know it will be on again Sunday, but I figure the more time he has, the more he can get used to it, and I just see more chemistry developing. So
I'll tell you, Ryan looks like Rookie of the Year, eh?
Yeah, and if he was playing San Francisco, I would probably say to play Matt Ryan. But I'm just doing it strictly from a matchup standpoint.
Yeah, it is a good matchup on San Francisco. Expect a lot of points, but I think Barber's going to run wild in that game. But,
Me too, yay!
All right, you want another question or you want to move on?
It's up to you.
All right, I got one more quarterback question here from Julie Urban in Manhattan, Kansas. Which QB should I start? Trent Edwards, Joe Flacco, Trent Edwards, Joe Flacco, Kyle Orton, and Tyler Thigpen. Girl, you got too many quarterbacks.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You have a lot of mediocre quarterbacks on that team. Well, I guess when you have mediocre quarterbacks, you sort of have to have a lot of them to play the matchups. But actually, Trent Edwards, after what I saw Monday night, I would drop him. I wouldn't even keep him on your roster. He looked horrible Monday night. And that was against a pretty bad Cleveland team. So, anyway, so I definitely wouldn't play Edwards. Orton probably would be your best matchup because he's playing the Rams. And I would say that looking at the matchups, it's hard to sit Tyler Thigpen at this point, but I would say, out of those two, I think Orton would be the guy to play going against the Rams.
All right, buddy. Let's and just as a disclaimer here, folks, just so you know, we're running this, of course, early because we have the Thursday games on. The NFL has been running it for the last few weeks, so we're playing with half a deck here and running our teleseminars early. We have only put out the waiver wire report. I know Barry will provide the other two reports in the next day or so. But just so you're aware, as we do publish this after the fact and don't have all the facts before the Sunday games. So anyway, Barry.
We'll do some strong plays, weak plays now. I think some strong plays this week. We'll start with quarterback. I think both Manning brothers have pretty good matchups. Eli's going against the Giants and Peyton's going against the Chargers. I think they both have good matchups. Kerry Collins against the Jets, I think will be pretty good simply because the Jets can stop the run, and I think they're going to focus on the run. And I think most teams now, as I said earlier, going against Tennessee, are going to focus on the run, so passing could be open. Kyle Orton at St. Louis, we talked about him. Aaron Rodgers against the Saints, I think that's a good matchup. And Ben Roethlisberger against Cincinnati. And something to watch out for, one of my sleeper picks is Jason Campbell against Seattle. Didn't look that good against Dallas, but Seattle is the last-ranked team in the league against the pass, so I think he would be a good play. Quarterbacks that have some weak matchups are Brett Favre. I don't really like his matchup against Tennessee. Matt Hasselbeck, even though he's come back, he looked horrible last week. He had 3 interceptions. So, he's playing Washington. Dante Culpepper against Tampa Bay. Joe Flacco against Philadelphia is not a great matchup. Donovan McNabb at Baltimore, who knows? It depends which Donovan McNabb shows up, but if you have a better option, I probably would sit him. And Phillip Rivers against Indianapolis. Indianapolis, they have trouble with the run, so I think you're going to see a lot of LT in this game. Phillip hasn't been overly impressive, and Indianapolis is pretty good. Running backs, good strong plays are Matt Forte going against St. Louis. Again, the Bears running back, he's been playing really well, pretty much off the charts lately, and the St. Louis is a welcoming wagon for any running back. Warwick Dunn, I think, has a strong play. He's going to get a lot of carries. They're playing Detroit, which is the 32nd ranked run defense in the league. Marion Barber against San Francisco. Marshawn Lynch against Kansas City. Willie Parker versus the Bengals. Steve Slayton against Cleveland. And D'Angelo Williams against Atlanta. My sleeper running back is actually Peyton Hillis going against Oakland, simply because Oakland is horrible, and Peyton Hillis actually looked pretty good last week. Weak plays in running backs. I think Willis McGahee has a weak play going against Philadelphia. They're still pretty good against the run, and he's also sharing carries. Tim Hightower has not looked good, even after he took that starting job from Edgerrin James. Like we talked earlier, J.J. Arrington's been getting some carries and getting the goal line carries. Cedric Benson at Pittsburgh. Chris Johnson at the Jets. I think that the Jets are going to pile up against the run. Julius Jones versus Washington. And I think that MJD against Minnesota is not a great matchup. And some of the wide receivers I've got as far as strong plays, I think this could be a good week for Terrell Owens. I think he may have a good week this week, simply because I think Romo wants to start looking for him more and getting that chemistry back. Santana Moss, even though he had a horrible game the other night, 20-some-odd yards, I think he's going to bust out this week against Seattle. Plaxico Burress at Arizona. Bernard Berrien at Jacksonville. Justin Gage had 147 yards and 2 touchdowns against Jacksonville last week. So I think Berrien could have a good week this week. Greg Jennings at New Orleans. Reggie Wayne at the Chargers. And I think Hines Ward at Cincinnati. Hines Ward has owned Cincinnati in the past, and I think he'll have a good game. Wide receivers, weak plays. I think Marcus Colson has a weak play against Green Bay. He hasn't been looking that great. He had one good game since he's been back, and Green Bay is really strong against the pass. Deion Branch against Washington. Again, they're pretty good against the pass. Lavernius Coles, we talked about him, but he's going against Tennessee. Deshaun Jackson against Baltimore. I don't like his matchup this week. And Chad Johnson, I have him down as a weak play, but he's been a weak play pretty much every week. But they are playing Pittsburgh. Some tight end strong plays. Dallas Clark has a strong play against San Diego. They are the number one team as far as giving up yards and to a tight end and most catches. So pretty much most tight ends they played this year played really well. Zach Miller against Denver. Chris Cooley at Seattle has a good matchup. I think Greg Olson at St. Louis. Bo Scaife against the Jets. Tony Scheffler at Oakland. And Dustin Keller at Tennessee. I think that the only weakness Tennessee does have with Keith Bullock out is up the middle. And Favre has been hitting Keller a lot up the middle, so he could be fairly productive. Weak play tight ends, I think Vernon Davis has a weak play this week going against Dallas. Tony Fasano, he hasn't really been doing much, so definitely someone to beware of. Kevin Boss at Arizona, I think that Eli's going to go to the wide receivers. Todd Heap at Philadelphia, he had one good game, but Philadelphia is pretty strong against the tight ends. And the last thing is some defenses I want to talk about. Strong play defenses. Pittsburgh has a very strong play against Cincinnati with a backup quarterback and no real run game. So I think that the Steelers could be really, really good this week. Bears against St. Louis. The surprising Broncos. I never thought I'd recommend the Broncos this year the way they were playing, especially their defense. But against Oakland again, I think they could be good.
At home.
Yeah, at home. And talking about defenses, one thing that you want to look at this year, if you don't have a dominant defense like a Tennessee or a Chicago or a Baltimore or a Giants or someone like that or Pittsburgh, if you need a matchup on defense, you need to start looking at weather.
And I was going to ask you about that.
I
know it's early this week, but how are things shaping up?
No, weather's horrible in the Midwest and the East. They had a snowstorm. They're having snowstorms in New York. They're having snowstorms in Philadelphia. Now we're getting to the point where there's rain, snow, and wind.
And my sympathies to you folks, because we're sitting here in La Mesa, California, and it was 80 degrees today.
Yes, it was. So definitely, if you're reaching for a defense, reach for a defense that's going to be against a lesser team in bad weather. Now is when you got to start looking at that. So following up on that. I think the Buccaneer defense has a good game at Detroit. Talk about a game in a dome. Cowboys against San Francisco. I think the Vikings have a good matchup against Jacksonville. The defense I'd be aware of, the Bill defense, they didn't really look that good against Cleveland the other night, and Cleveland is not that overly, strong of a team. So you got to look at the Bill defense. Even though they're playing Kansas City, toward earlier in the season, you would pick up whatever defense was playing Kansas City because they were horrible. But Kansas City with Tyler Thigpen has actually gotten a lot better. So, and the Bills defense hasn't done much. Some other unfavorable matchups are the Cardinals against the Giants, Chargers against Indy, the Jets at Tennessee, the Packers at New Orleans. Even though the Packers have a good defense and they've been playing well, your only hope in that game, I think, is that they could get another interception and run it back for a touchdown. Because, New Orleans, you never know. New Orleans is Jekyll and Hyde. They can come out and score 35 points without even blinking.
Well, they score those points anyway. The question is if their defense can hold it up.
Yeah, well, no, they only scored 3 a couple weeks ago.
That is true. They've been somewhat hot and cold. But
and the other weak one is, I think Baltimore and the Giants, we have a team in our league that has both of those defenses, and they don't know what to do because, even though my opinion is the better play is Baltimore going against Philly, the Giants' defense has been really strong, and they're playing Arizona. So, all
right. Are you running down to the end of the list here?
Yep, and then that's it.
All right. A couple of things here. Number one, let's go back to that New Orleans thing. Bush, I know you spoke of him on the injury report. But,
yeah, not really. He's still up in the air. They don't know if he's coming back or not.
And I think their season kind of hinges on Reggie Bush. We'll see what happens with him.
Well, especially now, actually, Aaron Stecker was put on the injured reserve for the rest of the season. He's out. The Saints today picked up Mike Bell.
Pierre Thomas, though, looked really
Pierre Thomas looks good, and Deuce McAllister is still playing. So,
but will be suspended.
They still have a running game, but they did pick up Mike Bell, the ex-Bronco, today. They signed him.
Number 2, ex-studs from years gone by. Larry Johnson, Kansas City. Kansas City's been looking better, and they ran him like a workhorse, like days of old last week. What do you think?
Well, he had 17 carries, so I don't know.
Well, yeah, they ran him until they got behind and had to throw. But
well, I know, but in Buffalo, the one thing Buffalo can do is they are pretty good against the run. But Larry Johnson is a premier running back, and if depending on what you have, I would definitely consider starting him this week.
Okay, and then time is running short. We have a couple of desperation questions here, and then we'll wrap this up. I've got. Do I dare bench Kurt Warner in favor of Kyle Orton this week?
What, are you, crazy?
Warner has a tough matchup against the Giants. Orton's playing the Rams. Also, should I bench Steve Smith and start Justin Gage? This is from Aaron in Marlboro.
Well, the first part, absolutely not. I mean, Kurt Warner is a must-play every week. I don't care who he's playing. Kurt Warner's been on fire. They're throwing 70% of the time. And even though the Giants are a stronger team, I think that the Giants are going to get up in this game, and Arizona's going to be throwing possibly 80 to 90% of the time. And I don't care how good the Giants are against the pass, you are not going to stop all three of those receivers. You're not going to stop Bolden and Fitzgerald and Breston. They're going to get their catches, they're going to get their yards. I predict that Warner will throw for over 300 yards and possibly 1 to 2 touchdowns. And I don't see Orton doing, even though they're playing St. Louis. St. Louis, you don't know which team's going to come out either, but
Warner's going to throw. And
but if your choice is those two, I would definitely stick with Warner.
All right, I can't argue with you on that. And then last question from Perry in New Brunswick. This is an important week. I need to make a postseason run. Which 2 running backs from Ryan Grant, Willie Parker, and Steve Slayton?
Well, you actually have some pretty good choices there, but unfortunately, if you have to sit one, you have to sit one. But I would definitely play Willie Parker. They're playing the Bengals, and Parker's owned Cincinnati in the past, so you got to play Willie Parker. The other one I'd play is Ryan Grant. I mean, they're playing New Orleans. New Orleans is okay against the run, but against Chicago last week, Ryan Grant ran for 145 yards. So, and Chicago has one of the strongest run defenses in the league. I mean, Slayton has a good matchup against Cleveland, but I think out of those 3, you got to sit one of them. And if I had to pick one to sit, I would sit Slayton.
All right, buddy. I would like to ask you if you think that people make rash decisions at this time of year, and weigh in on how important is it to just go in and grab somebody and dump somebody off your bench, not thinking about it, and how often that's a mistake.
Well, I think I think that's true. I mean, I did that last week when I dropped Lance Moore to pick up Justin Gage. To pick up Justin Fargas, because I thought, starting running back, and he's playing decent, and they're playing Denver this week. And I thought, but then when I put him on my bench, someone else picked up Lance Moore, and I was thinking, why did I drop Lance Moore? I'm much stronger running back than I am at wide receiver. And I'm probably not going to play Justin Fargas anyway. And, and I sort of regretted that decision. And I think that people see people drop other good players and they make rash decisions. I agree with that. But you have to look long term. I think at this point, if on your bench, you need to start dropping all the dead weight. You need to start dropping people you're not going to play, and start putting in, especially handcuffs. Now is the time to handcuff your star running backs. If you have a star running back and their backup is out there, pick them up, because if your star running back gets hurt, you don't have to worry about it. You can plug someone else right into there.
Or if you've had that backup on your bench all year and haven't used them, it's not a time to drop them. Like if you got Chester Taylor and Adrian Peterson, you need to hang on to them.
This past week, or within the last 2 weeks, I have Thomas Jones and I have Marion Barber, and I picked up Leon Washington. And this past week, the person who had Felix Jones dropped him, and I picked him right up, because now I'm set. If Barber gets hurt, if Thomas Jones gets hurt, I have their backups. And Felix Jones and Leon Washington, as I talked about earlier, are guys you can put, when they're healthy, you can put in your lineup anyway.
All right, buddy. It's that time. It's been a half an hour, and we're going to wrap this up right now. Everyone, welcome and thank you for joining us here on the Big Dogs Blog Fantasy Football Week 12 webinar. We hope you are getting something out of this and it's helping you win your league, which is the key to this whole thing. Folks, you can go to bigdogsblog.info and pick up on Barry's blog any of these articles, the weekly waiver wire, strong play, weak play, and injury reports, the webinar replays, and if you want to buy a football ticket, we've got a place for you to go, StubHub. So that's it for the commercial, too. If you need to sign up for our email notifications on the reports, go to bdbff.com, give us your name and email address, and we don't spam anyone. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great week, and good luck. Good night, Barry.
Good night. Have a good night, everybody.